Kia ora. I'm coming from the cave that is my optometry practice. And I've got, what is it, Sam or Hamiora?
Hamiora works, but Sam's better for most of the world.
So, how'd you come, that was my first question, how'd you come up with Sam the Trap Band? Because I'm involved with this group in Australia called Real Movement, and most of them are strength coaches and stuff, and the guys that sort of teaches them about social media says you've got to have this name that tells your name, says what you do, and you've got it perfectly. Where did you come up with Sam the Trap Man?
It was it came from my little cousin.
Yeah.
So I was travelling around the country doing trapping workshops and helping people set up conservation projects, and they kind of just took the piss out of me. Like thought I was some kind of superhero travelling around saving the world through trapping, and kind of came up with Sam the Trap Man. And I was like, after I got over the shock of them taking the piss out of me, I was like, oh yeah, that'd almost work.
Yeah.
Like that is the old Instagram handle, eh?
That's right. So your cousin should set up a online, I don't know, workshopping. He can make lots of money coming up with Instagram handles.
Totally. Some pretty good ones out there at the moment, though, eh?
Yeah. Where'd you get the image?
I swapped that image with my mate's a graphic designer.
Good. They're good people to know.
Totally, right? He's an epic artist. He does a lot of the t-shirts for our surf contests and things like that.
Sweet.
And his freezer was empty.
Nice.
So I thought I'd put my skills to work and offered him a bunch of venison and pork and even slipped some nasty old goat in there.
Nice.
And he slipped me a graphic, which is kind of handy.
Yeah, the two people I live with, unfortunately, shoot more deer than I do, so I can't get that by them. But yeah, they're graphic designers. It's been someone, as you can see, quite science minded. It's quite good to hang around creatives a bit, eh?
Totally, bro. Helps balance out the old the pace a little bit, eh?
The analytics. So you said you're in the process of doing up some conservation. How obviously your weekend is balancing out. Where does the surfing fit in?
I really struggle in life with doing things that don't have purpose, eh?
Yeah.
So like hunting's real easy to justify because it's like food for the family, gardening's awesome. Most of the things I do in my life have purpose, and then surfing's this like random outlier escapism.
Yeah.
It just kind of fits into my life. When everything gets a bit much, I can always just go to the beach and drop it, eh?
Yeah.
Which is pretty good. And living in Gibson, it really pumps all the time.
And so that surf club you ran was not just longboarding; it was quite niche. What tell us a bit about what that niche is, and there seemed to be a lot around the event itself, but the actual surfing even was niche.
The surfing style I'm into is like real particular, eh? So we all ride traditional single fin longboards, which is the same style of board they rode in the 1950s and 60s.
Yeah.
And because they're so heavy and they're difficult to turn, it really smooths out your stock. So they're suited to waves between sort of waist high and head high. But it smooths out your stock. It's all about looking aesthetically pleasing on the wave, not necessarily doing the most intricate manoeuvres, but that style of surfing is what we're into, and it's starting to have an explosion around the country. So in the longboard scene, which is a niche of the surfing scene, it went through this incredible process of like high performance longboarding.
Yep.
When I was coming through, like everyone was a shortboarder, right? It was all about punting big ears, slashing big cutbacks, and having real aggressive styles, which is awesome. And then that transfers onto the longboard, and up until maybe 5 years ago, no one had kind of embraced that sort of more relaxed, subtle style of longboarding, which is kind of what that mentality I think is what people associate with surfing in general. So that's what we love about it, eh? So the single fin mingle is an event that it's the key event in New Zealand as far as it brings the best international guys to New Zealand every year for us to try and beat in logging. Yeah.
And so how many got in, or no one?
So no one came in for. Actually, we had a few guys from Hawaii and a few guys from Japan that were still here, that were here prior to lockdown.
Yeah.
But yeah, no travelling international. So this year it was real unique. Like, we got a real strong log scene around the country, and so all the New Zealanders got invites to the single fin mingle, because the single fin, you can't just enter the single fin mingle.
Good. Yeah.
It's like purely invitational, and it's not just based on your surfing, Like, you've got to be firstly a good human, doing good things for the world. You've got to have style, so it's all fancy dress. It's a formal occasion. Everyone dresses up in like vintage woolen suits and like, you know, the trilbies and everything. It's your style is a big factor, and then you've got to be a fairly proficient surfer as well. But yeah, so all us New Zealanders got invited this year, and we got the treatment. Like it's crack up to turn up to a surf contest where they're like, all right, we got to weigh your surfboard, make sure it's heavy enough, so you put it on the big scales. They give you here's your free towel. Turn up in the morning. It's like, oh, we've made you breakfast, and what kind of coffee would you like? It's like we're on the World Surf League or something. It's nice. Like professional sportsmen. Make you lunch, and you sit in the hot tub to warm up, and before you heat, and they hand you a beer. It's like, it's pretty fancy.
Yeah, mate. Bedded something like somewhere in the middle of summer that water's cold enough. Like, what are you guys doing in the middle of winter?
Coming from Gizzy, it's just ridiculously cold, like proper frozen. We're having to like scrape ice off our boards in the morning. I don't know if I'm keen to surf Sumner again in winter.
Yeah,
it's pretty cold.
I'm no surfer. I've been trying to sort of master a 3-finned carbon longboard the last 2 or maybe even 3 summers, and got nowhere fast, probably because it's only been 2 weekends at a time. But where did surfing sort of begin for you, and how did you then niche out on what did you call them?
Logs. Yeah. So I don't know when surfing started for me. Like my grandfather had the first longboard in Gibson.
Nice.
But first surfboard ever in Gizzy, so I don't remember. Like, most of the kids in my family start surfing before they can walk. So we're all out there on boards. The woman in like my mum surfs, my dad surfs, my sisters surf. The kids that we have, we just put them on boards real early. So been surfing my whole life. But my dad is known as like a big wave surfer.
Cool.
So if it's like triple overhead at the point, Dad's out there, you know. Hamiora, that place is heavy. Like, it's scary. If you get that place wrong and hit the groin, it's just like not pretty. Right. So I grew up terrified of Hamiora, but Dad was like the big wave surfer, you know, he's out there. So for me, I grew up in that environment where there's a lot of pressure to perform in big waves. Yeah. And I'm such a scared human. Like, I'm so soft compared to him, in that respect. So I was always terrified. Yeah. And then I found this little outlet that was logging overseas. I was over in England, and they had these old single fin boards, and everyone was into the super mellow vibe.
Where was that, like Plymouth or something, or Portsmouth? Or?
It was down in Bantam Beach.
Bantam
in South Devon.
Right.
Yeah, so it still support Plymouth Argyle.
Right. Yeah.
Like just around the corner. But yeah, there's kind of longboard scene there, and kind of came back to New Zealand, and people were just starting to cotton on to that scene. And yeah.
You got to love when you get a bit of synergy. You find something, or maybe it's, there's theories out there about attracting stuff, but you find something, and then you all of a sudden find a group that are also into the same thing,
Totally, yeah. And it's like, and logging's real unique too. Like, a lot of my mates, bad knees, bad hips, bad ankles, and like shortboarding, you just can't do it. Like, past your 30s and 40s, it's real difficult to do. So logging's something that transcends all generations, and it's something when like we get stuffed knees, we can continue to do because it's a bit more gentle on our bodies too.
Don't tell that to Kelly Slater.
Kelly's amazing, He rides a log.
Yeah.
I've seen him ride a log, yep.
Nice. I'd imagine that guy could do anything on the surfboard.
He'd ride a bench top, eh?
Yeah. Although I wonder if Kelly would ever, get the old strap your feet in and go on the foil with Lee Hamilton. What did your dad reckon of like foiling on big waves?
I don't know, actually. Like, my dad's not... Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really discussed it. He's pretty inclusive, so he kind of reckons everyone should just ride what they want. He's not into aggressive vibes in the water, eh? I think he's open to everything. He's open to stuff. It's all good. Yeah.
Sweet, bro. So a couple of weeks ago, you put up Bush Lawyer as, and you said that was like the perfect nighttime tea, and I mentioned to you that Kawakawa is pretty good for that as well. And so you bought in some Bush Lawyer, some Kawakawa and Koromiko, was that right? Yeah. So start us on the Bush Lawyer and tell us about. It's not just a prick in the bush, it can be helpful.
It's the most annoying thing in the world in the bush, eh? But that's like where my journey on sort of foraging started, eh? Because I'm not a plant person. Mm-hmm. I've always been an animal person. I didn't know how to identify plants.
Yeah. So I've had Sean Baker on here, and he'd say that's fine. Mm-hmm. Just eat the meat, mate.
Right. But I was at uni, eh?
Yeah.
And we had exams on plants.
Right.
So like botany was a thing. So
what was your overall structure for university? What were you studying?
I did a diploma in environmental management and bachelor of biological science. Right. And then topped it up with a diploma in education later on.
Wicked.
Yeah.
And so they said do botany.
Well, botany was one of those things in biological science there. So and I couldn't remember the names of the trees. Oh. Really struggled with that. And so
I'm with you on that. I follow David Norton really closely, and I read all of the stuff, and I always share it, and then I get out to the bush and go, what was that one again?
He's a guru, eh?
Yeah,
that's epic. And so I had to find out what each tree was useful for, and then it stuck. It's like, I can eat it. It's important to me. Sweet, we're good.
That's probably why I remember Kawakawa.
Right? Yeah. Because the boys on the coast use it as to pass their drug test.
You've already just taught me that one, so that's not why I can use it. But
cleanses out your liver, eh? So Tātaramō, the bush lawyer, that's real unique. Because I don't know about you, but for me when I'm working hard and I get a million different conservation projects I'm trying to get done and family stuff, I just start thinking too much at night. Yeah. And so Tātaramō helps us still our brain and just gives us a real solid sleep. Like I wake up in the morning being like, whoa,
what happened?
Felt like I just gone to bed right then. So Tātaramō's epic for sleep, eh?
Do you know what the active ingredient is, or no? Just it's a story and it works.
You tell me, eh? That's kind of how most of my knowledge has been handed down. It gets told to me, this is what it's useful for. Yeah. I haven't looked at it with the science.
No,
names,
cool.
I'm sorry.
Who are you talking to?
Whole bunch of different folk, eh? A lot of the stuff that I've picked up is from way back in the day when I was in Te Urewera, kind of came up in Te Urewera, and some of the old bushmen that I was working with back then didn't take food into the bush with them. It's not really their culture. Yeah. And so hunting was a big part of it, and also being able to forage food. So a lot of supplejack, a lot of hake, and then being able to forage herbage for cups of tea was just the natural thing. It's just that's what you need. That's what you need. Got the runs. We ate some bad meat. There's some koromiko that'll bring your guts back into balance and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. And what was the sap or gum that you said was good for clotting blood?
So rimu is really, it's really astringent. Yeah. That's when back in the day, the story that I've been told is back in the day, it was the first aid. Yes. So at a battle site, it was quick, find some rimu, and they'd actually take rimu sap with them, so that they could put it straight into wounds, so they wouldn't bleed out. So rimu is great, and then there's a lot of written stuff around the early pig hunters here using it for dogs, and also kareao, which is the supplejack that's astringent too, so using that in when dogs get cut up by pigs too.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, like there's a few things, but emu is definitely part of that first aid box.
Yeah, so like a lot of it sort of tends to be like medicinal or survival. Is there sort of tools and things around the bush and stories like that? Like I know one of the famous ones from Josh James is getting those fruiting bodies for holding a not a flame, a coal.
Like an ember, eh?
Yeah, an ember. Yeah, is there much sort of storytelling around that?
Totally, all sorts of things. Like for example, the mahoe is a classic one. Like I always teach my students, and that out in the bush, that mahoe is a fire tree.
Okay.
Because mahoe whitey wood has those beautiful white stems that are often dead.
Right. Yeah.
And it's pouring down with rain and everything's wet and you're trying to find dry wood. Mahoe has always got standing wood.
Right. Yeah.
And then if you get a hardwood such as rimu, you can rub it, find some dead rimu and rub it in the soft mahoe, and that friction will create fire.
Yeah. And will that sort of thread up a bit as well, the mahoe? Sort of create like one of the, I think he's like Norwegian dudes I follow, he kind of scrapes the softwood up and gets like a bed to hold it in. Exactly. Will it do that?
Yeah, do the same thing totally. Then you've got that sort of tinder there ready to go. Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of mahoe, and that's passed down to us through the stories of Maui as well.
Right.
And mahuika. So there is all that knowledge as well around tools, and there's sites in Gizzy. I kind of haven't got right into it because I want to use things that are contemporary these days, but like I kind of get a little bit fascinated by things such as like there's a big flint mine just north of Kaiti in Gisborne, and it's like one of 7 big flint mines in the country, and kind of my mate's into napping, and
we'll just pause.
Yeah,
hello Tim.
Sorry brother, are you on vision at the moment?
No.
Cool. Are you out of visual again?
Yes.
I'm about to go read it on the server.
Awesome.
We're sure you're cock it up big time.
And thanks. Flint mines.
Yeah, so just kind of play around with a few things like that as far as tools go as well.
Yeah.
Made a few hinaki out of supplejack and things like that, but
nice.
Yeah, just fascinating really.
Did you catch any?
Yeah, caught some tuna, which is cool. Just for the record, I'm on a little personal rahui on tuna though.
How do you? This is something new to me. The guys I live with. So how does this work? My mate's girlfriend, she also lives there too. Her mum's partner is a fishing game officer,
right?
And he came to the farm and told them about the eels and how they come from like Polynesia or something like that, and they get up our creeks and go all the way up to where they want to spawn, and that's them, and they're really really old, and like we found this really nice old white one, and we're feeding the ducks to them. Like, it's kind of like, oh, should you eat those?
It's a pretty cool life cycle way, and they're pretty amazing animals. I don't know. I just look at our freshwater ecosystems and go, they're pretty damaged. Yeah. And to me, like my partner, she loves tuna. She'll eat smoked tuna for days. And same with whitebait, like she's from Greymouth. It's just her life, which is all good. I'll cook her those things for sure. But for me personally, ethically, I'm a little bit like, wow, our waterways are so damaged, and our whitebait fishery's so toast, and our tuna fishery's so toast. Meanwhile, we're still sending them to Japan as bloody pet food. But for me, I'm just like, not. There's other ways to get my protein that are way more ethically sourced than harvest those natives.
So, like, how easy or difficult is it to cover so many ecosystems? Like, surely just one patch of bush is hard enough, and I'm sure there's parallels to other pieces of bush. But then when you start looking at small catchments, big rivers, and then into the ocean, like, is it difficult to sort of gauge that and gauge your morals and how they sort of transpire across all those types of ecosystems.
It's got to be the hardest thing. Like, personal integrity is going to be the hardest thing in the world, eh? And like, I feel like with any knowledge, we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Of anything really, and my bush knowledge is so limited compared to like those that have come before me and that. And so, yeah, I just try and make the best decisions I can with the information I have available, mate.
And that's all you can do, eh?
And my son is like 15 months old. Like, I know that in 20 years' time he'll be like, Dad, you're just such a dick. Why did you make that decision? It was the worst decision ever. You've just like completely destroyed a species or something. You know?
Yeah.
But I hope that he will have the same, you know.
By the time he's 30 or 40, he'll have empathy for him, and he'll realise that, like, he was just doing the best that he could.
Surely, eh?
While he's 20s, he'll be like, you're so useless.
Totally, like, hey, all of our ancestors have stuffed this place up, you know, like, we burnt tracts of land, bloody harvested more to extinction, like, whatever side of the fence we sit, our ancestors have stuffed this place for us. And we're just going to stuff it for the next generation too, so hopefully we can just give back a little bit at the same time.
Yeah, old Joe Rogan ranting about New Zealand. That was one of the things he said. They need to bring the Haast eagle back. And it was just like, well, I'm not so sure about that.
I'd be stoked actually. Like, us humans need something to pull us into line a little bit. And a big eagle, when we're just sitting there glassing on the tops for wops or something, eh? Big eagle comes past, eh? We'd be running for that bushline real quick.
Running for cover. You see those ones in like Mongolia, jump deer and jump wolves. That'd be I don't know about crack up, but it'd be fascinating and would have a better appreciation of predator prey if you were sitting there watching a face, watching a deer and see an eagle come down and swipe your quarry. You'd be like, damn it.
But even have a go at us, eh? It would just bring us out of that top predator, apex predator role, and kind of bring us back into line with the ecosystem, perhaps, eh?
Have you done any time in North America where there are sort of... You have? Yeah.
Did some time. I was looking after small farms up in New Hampshire and that, eh?
Right, eh? Yeah.
And some time in the Appalachians as well.
Mm-hmm.
Come across bear fairly regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And mountain lions. Saw plenty of mountain lions.
Yeah, they scare me.
I'm petrified, eh? Like, I haven't found another situation. Don't know what it was like for you, but
no, I haven't been there. But I was what Ben O'Brien we were talking about before. He had a game camera footage the other day of this monster, like the feet of the thing. I was just like, imagine getting clubbed to it by that.
And they're just so quiet.
Yeah.
Like, I've got a mate that guides like mountain lion hunting trips with the folk over there, and he reckons they'll carry a chihuahua in their backpack.
Right.
But they reckon also that they'll be tracking a mountain lion, and oftentimes it will be circling behind you and tracking you back as well. And if that doesn't make you scared, I don't know what does, eh? Because those animals are powerful and they're quiet. Like, when I I was lucky I had the dog with me, but when I saw one in the bush, I've never met something that I've just like frozen and couldn't move. It just like, there was no way my brain could override my body to get out of there.
It was like, don't move.
That was full on. Yeah.
And those times when you really get into your primitive nervous system are freaky, eh? Like, have you bungee jumped before?
No, I'm too scared.
So that's one of those times where you're like, right, I'm going to jump, and your body's like, no, you're not.
Incredible, eh?
Yeah. And then, like, I've talked about boxing, like, it's just like, focus on that thing that's right in front of you, don't worry about anything else. Sound, peripheral vision, just don't get hit and try to hit them.
so real, eh?
Yeah.
It's the same with surfing, surprisingly.
Right,
like, out in big waves, like triple overhead, reef that's like knee to waist deep. If you stuff it up, you're getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to override. You've got to pedal over the fall. So you're on a steep drop, and you've got to go. If you don't go, you're going to get hurt. So, but your body does. It just like seizes up on you for a moment, eh? And it's like it doesn't want to let you go.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Like, what is it about you? You know the background to that. What is it about?
Just protecting yourself. But it's funny. Like, I think that's the first step of going hunting, is overriding that I'm going to go to the place that could kill me. You know, you're probably not going to get hurt or harmed, but our nervous system's so prone to preservation that, like, getting out of the car, walking onto the track and leaving it all behind is like your body and your mind saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I know it. Like, I'm getting better of it the more I do it, but I know early on I'd need like 5 trips to the toilet before I even got an hour in. My nervous system was just like so freaking out, and it's funny. You're like, I've got a map, I've got my gear. What am I worried about? But and I guess that's where like mental illnesses of like anxiety and stuff kind of kick in. That must be what it's kind of like.
Mine's like the total reverse, eh?
Yeah.
Like coming back to town.
Oh, that's
where
weird too.
my social anxiety kicks in, eh? Like going to the bush, it's like I finally don't have to worry about anything. It's like fine. Like going to the bush, I know that the bush can provide for me.
Yeah.
And I know that I know the bush well enough to be okay in that situation. Going to town, like, I just don't understand the rules sometimes. It's like there's all of these social kind of obligations and these, you know, these ways of being that you have to align with. It's like, oh, as a bushman, it's like pretty intimidating, eh?
That's so funny, eh? Like, Dave Perry and I were in McKenna for 4 days, and even going from the, like, you know, marked triangle track to the Tapuia Springs track was just like, well, we're at State Highway 1 here.
Right.
And then it was kind of like, we got back to the car, and then you start seeing more and more houses, and you're like, oh, this is kind of weird. And then you start getting to the edge of town, and it starts getting more built up, and then, like you say, you get back into the city, like, oh, this is so weird.
Yeah.
And it's just 4 days being in the bush.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so, like, when I was talking to Paul Michaels, I was like, what is it like coming out of like a 4 month trip or something?
Yeah.
Trapping possums. Like, yeah, that's just...
We when I was working down south of the dock, we're doing 10-day back-to-back trips.
Nice.
And so you...
Just to refill, basically, and carry on.
Pretty much I give my washing to the boss's wife, and she'd give me my new kit of gear.
Yeah.
We'd go and do a food shop, and have a shower. That was pretty good. And cheekily go to the pub and have a run, and that was about it. And then, you know, a day later we'd be on the chopper back out there for another 10 days in Middlefield in winter.
Wow.
And oftentimes you'd be 10 days alone, and the only radio contact you'd have is like 7 o'clock every night on your ski.
Radio, yeah.
And it just gets to the point where I'd lose half days, and the last time I remember I'd be on that ridge over there, and suddenly I was on the strap line way over here. I just couldn't even remember. I was just in my own brain for that period of time, talking to trees and talking to Kia and stuff. It's like the social interaction from a bird is really valuable in those times. It's just weird. It's just weird. But you spend whole winters not really communicating with people.
Wow. That, you know, shit, I don't even know where to start on that. What were you doing first? We'll go with that.
So there's a whole bunch of conservation projects down there in Fiordland.
Yeah.
And most of them are, you know, a couple of days boat ride or an hour or so helicopter ride away from town. And Tiano's the middle of nowhere anyway. But yeah, so down there I was trapping mostly. So trapping stoats with Dock 200s. And I was also doing bait station lines, carrying 20 kg sacks of poison up, you know, Fiordland U-shaped valleys. You're literally having to hold on to trees to climb your way up. It's pretty intense. And then doing all manner of things, trapping and some aerial toxin jobs as well. Coming from the North Island, I knew that I wasn't that way inclined. It didn't really align with my values, but I thought better to be involved and do some aerial 1080 jobs, get on the ground and see the damage afterwards, see how it all stacks up, and then then I'm informed, then I'm knowledgeable, then I can go home, take that experience home, and really inform our decision making, our people at home here.
Yeah, so I think third point you were raising with me earlier around the fact that the deer preferential browsers that if there's food, they don't really go for the 1080. I thought that was pretty amazing.
It's really interesting. Like, deer did some whitetail surveys around the Glenorchy drops down in Glenorchy, and we found that they needed about 20 pellets they had to eat about 20 pellets to get a lethal dose.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a lot of surveys for deer walking transects, and what we found was about 5 to 10% of deer, when there's in a bush environment, when there's food available, it's about 5 to 10% that die, which is pretty gnarly, but it also doesn't really affect our hunting.
Yeah, Jordan Munn tried to sort of thought that growth was about 30% year on year. So,
and Jordan's a switched on dude. Like, he comes from one of the top contracting families of Fiordland. Like, he's bloody onto it. But then you got outliers like Molesworth, where there's just no tucker on the ground at all, and those deer are starving and they're hungry, and of course they're going to hoover up any food source you put in front of them. So there is variance, but in most situations, like bush environments, you're kind of only going to lose 5-10%. Yeah.
And what's it better than the cereal or something?
Cereal pellet, yeah.
And is the green just more attractive, or?
The green's actually, it doesn't really stand out. It's a colour that should deter most bird species, so it's about deterring non-targets.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, how did you feel seeing, as you said, damage on the ground? Like, did you find that it was, doing the purpose?
It's really like, where do we want to go with that? Don't want to put my neck out too far, but for where I sit, it's a really effective tool on possums.
Yeah.
Ethically, I don't like it.
No. Yeah.
Don't like it at all. I've seen possums die from 1080, and the slow manner in which they die, when I saw a possum that was dying from 1080 poisoning, I went over to it and stomped its head in so it was quick.
Yeah.
Like, I ethically, same as shooting a deer, like there's nothing in me that wants to gut shoot a deer.
No.
So there's nothing in me that wants a possum to suffer either. So ethically I'm not alright with it, but it's a real effective tool for possums. Saw a lot of animals dying on the ground. Yeah. Both, and the majority of those were non-native.
And so then how do you sort of feel if that's happening around 5 days of a mission, you're seeing animals dying on the ground and you've still got 5 days left? How do you sort of reconcile that to yourself or whatever, and like, is it just sort of something that you can move forward with? The bush is a beautiful place and great environment, but when you're by yourself, what tools were you sort of using to keep on the job?
In those particular jobs, though, for short periods of time, which I was really grateful for. Right?
Yeah, I'd say.
I remember, like, when I was a kid, I got told to kill a bunch of muttons for a party.
Right. Yeah.
Killing 5 muttons in a row and dressing them out as a kid, dealing with that level of death, and killing mutton with a knife as a kid, that really got me down. It really affected me.
Yeah.
And I'd say that going in after aerial jobs, the same thing. Like, it really affected me. But to me, it's important, the same as hunting, to be as connected to that process of death as possible. So, like, whether it's killing muttons for our family to eat, or shooting a deer, I want to be right there.
Yeah.
I want to experience it. I want to acknowledge that this animal's suffering for us to flourish. And that's what pest control is about, hey?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of 1080, is that we distance ourselves from it.
Yeah.
So that's happening over there in the bush, and we're not physically holding these animals when they're suffering.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's easy for us to say, oh, they need to die for the birds to flourish. Kapoi.
Yeah.
That's a cool justification. Most people in town here would really struggle with holding an animal when they died like that.
Yeah.
Not saying that 1080 shouldn't be used, that's a judgment for other people. But for me, I'm not going to be involved in more aerial options.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with trapping, eh? Like, staying at an Airbnb a little while ago, this beautiful old lady was she wanted to yarn with me about karma, right? She's a beautiful,
Yeah.
a beautiful old lady, and she was saying, kind of explained to her what I did for work, like trap, and how many traps do you reckon you put out in your life? And I was like, thousands, right?
Thousands, right.
And she's like, so how many deaths do you think you're responsible for every night? And I was like, oh mate, you're gonna do that to me? And she's like, what do you think your karma is? And I was like, that's pretty huge too. But what I try to justify in my mind is that the way that I go about pest control now is the same way I go about my hunting.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be as humane as possible and as instantaneous as possible. So I want those animals, I have no doubt in my mind, those animals have to come out of those ecosystems to make our birds flourish. It's just like Cam said around farming, right?
Yeah.
That's the limiting factor. We want our birds to go up. I've got to take those animals out of the ecosystem. But in doing so, I need to make sure that it's as respectful as possible.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's hard to sleep at night.
Yeah, shit. That is heavy, and like when I spoke to Kieran, that was kind of like what he's saying about hunting. It's like at the end of the day, our story ends with we killed the animal, and in telling Justin that he kind of said that he used to sugarcoat it, but now he's taken responsibility that I killed the animal, but this is what I'm doing, and this is the respect and the closeness that I get. And it's funny you're saying about killing a sheep. I remember we had a sick one when I was, I think maybe intermediate or so, and Dad was away, and Mum was kind of like, oh, can you go put it out of its misery? And I was just like, oh no, I don't want to do that. And luckily or unluckily it had already passed away, but I was just like, oh man, it's bad on one hand and then bad on the other, and you're just like, oh, what do you even do there?
I think it's one of those things in New Zealanders we're real good at.
Yeah.
Because many of us have grown up rurally, eh?
Yeah, or even semi-rurally, you're close enough to know what sort of happens, and if it's Southland, weather can go from gorgeous to terrible, and all of a sudden you got stock on the ground. It's not great. And
we all get that that suffering with inevitable death is a lot worse than a quick death, eh?
Yeah.
And I think that many of us sort of turn those same justifications through to pest control and hunting, eh?
Yeah. And like I was saying to a mate that, I've got aspirations to run a deer farm one day, and experiencing the Hawke's Bay drought and experiencing, the worst of what farming can be. I think it's been a really valuable life experience. Like it's not something that you want to go through, but knowing that it's pretty much as bad as it can get, and it probably could get slightly worse, but
it's been pretty rugged though, eh?
Yeah, it's been pretty rough, and to see just like the economics of it all just go down, like feed goes up, there's all these mouths to feed, you can't just get rid of them because
they're worth nothing.
Yeah, they're worth nothing. The COVID's shut down, well not shut down, but slowed down processing. You couldn't get animals on the truck. You'd bring them in and you'd weigh them again and go, oh no, they've gone backwards and things like that. And it's just like, it's a tough, nature, right? It's a tough life out there.
Totally, yeah, for sure.
You're going back to the sort of flint mine and the different trees around. One of the things I sort of touched on with Cam when we were talking about Clements Mill was like, what's the whakapapa of an area? Is that what's really attractive about working into Urewera? That there's like so much oral sort of history around that area?
Te Urewera's just a different world, eh?
Yeah.
Especially like it's just a different place. I've never experienced feeling or vibe or intensity in an area of bush as that I have experienced in Te Urewera. But yeah, it's even neater now that too we have reclaimed Te Urewera.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty pretty unique place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go on that one?
Oh, just like there must be like different zones and so much history that's gone through there.
There's so much history, and it's not really mine to tell. But there's been some really rugged things happen up there too, eh?
Yeah.
The people up there have had it very difficult. Had colonisation really difficult, but through that process, it's one of those places that Tūhoe have actually retained a lot of their integrity as a culture, which is an incredible way. So especially up Waimana and places like that, you go up there and there's 13 different marae the whole way up the valley, all in quick succession from each other. People, bushmen on horseback all the time, big packs of dogs, dogging deer. Like it's just a whole different culture, eh?
Yeah.
And the other thing is it's just really, I don't know how deep you want to go, but it's really spiritually intact too. So you can just feel that as well when you go there. So it's pretty unique in that way, and it's also a stronghold for biodiversity too. You know, particularly in the North Island here, with there's kōkako in there on most of the ridges.
Yeah.
There's kiwi right the way through there, fuel on the streams. There's tomtits. There's riflemen. Like that place is just alive.
Okay.
They're just pumping out birds. Like you just hear kakariki and kāka, and like when you wake up there in the morning, it's just so alive with bird song. And I'm like, when I wake up there, I'm like, this is New Zealand. Like, this is to me. I'm like, that's the pinnacle. Yeah, it's epic.
Even more so than Fiordland, like, or just a different vibe.
Fiordland's a harsh environment, eh?
Yeah.
Like for me, Fiordland feels like you've almost got to combat Fiordland, eh? Like it's just like that place, dead. In that beach forest, there's no food.
Yeah.
You know, on the coast, there's you can definitely get a feed, but then the ocean's so wild.
Yeah.
You know, and the hills are so steep. Like that place is just trying to kill you.
Yeah.
Like you have to work real hard to stay okay, stay well, stay alive, and not get depressed from all the rain. Like that place is horrible, but also incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
Whereas Te Urueta is kind of, it's real welcoming. It's like, so everything around here is fruiting, you can eat that, and you know, like it's warm and it's abundant and prolific. So there's so many different manu there. Like it must have been an incredible place to be prior to predators, mammalian predators.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me that's the difference. Like Fiordland's just stark and trying to make your life really difficult. Whereas Te Urueta is like, you want a feed? Here's a feed.
Yeah.
You want something warm? Here's something warm. Like it's kind of looks after you in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that probably seems to the reason why there's been so much challenge for the area, right?
Totally.
Yeah, and like, it's weird coming from Southland, or Murihiku, and like Maitahu covering pretty much the whole of the South Island. Yeah, you know, the primary school I went to, I was lucky enough that we were exposed to a lot of Māori culture and had like kabaka and things and stayed on the marae a lot. And so, you know, even though there's not much of that exposure in Invercargill, I was lucky enough to receive that. But there really wasn't much story around the area. And then moving to a place like the Waikato and hearing all of a sudden about land wars and treaty settlements and what different parts of the like sub tribes were within just that area, it's just like blew me away. And then again coming over to Hawke's Bay and seeing the ranges and things, and like you start to understand why a whakapapa has all these so much significant land masses to it, and that's, I guess that's what's really interesting me, like having the Otawaras up there, Kawaka's right there, Ruahini's down there. It's just like, wow, what a spectacular countryside. They just have so much to it.
Totally, and all of that stuff, all of that history that isn't front of mind too, because those areas have been cleared of bush.
Yeah,
is pretty massive as well, you know. So there would have been bush a whole way right to the coast in some areas. So yeah, there's a lot of history there that we don't acknowledge too, I think. But you know, like I look at kaitahu. My partner's kaitahu. My son is too, and so I look at what they do too, and they're some of the more connected bushmen
Right. Yeah.
in the country. You know, we have people like Tanya Davis on the TT Islands down there,
Okay.
and he's bringing back Tiaki, the little saddle, back to all the islands, and he's protecting.
Is he the same Tane Davis with the trucks?
Yeah, he drives like a old school vintage ute and stuff like that.
But did he have a haulage company in Southland? Because there's a Tane Davis haulage company in Southland for a
He
while.
might have, mate. Yeah, he might have.
Maybe.
Yeah, he's a good dude anyway. But yeah, kaitahu, they're really switched on, especially around business models and making things happen for the environments as well.
Yeah, no, like played rugby with a guy that managed a lot of the properties in Christchurch, and he sort of mentioned the small. Well, he was part of a small portfolio, the big portfolio. I was like, holy cow, mate!
Totally.
Most of Christchurch is belongs to the iwi. So that's in Sam Queenstown. Like, one knew about that most of Queenstown belonged to the iwi. But
It's really neat, eh?
Yeah.
And I reckon it'd be good to see more of that connectedness in the North Island too. You know?
But even like the story of, like, you know, we know that it's Greenstone Valley, but like, you know, that sort of speaks to the wealth of that iwi, and you don't really know why or about that route and things like that, you know. Now there's great walks in there, but I think that is also lost on a lot of people as well, like why that's such a significant walk.
Yeah, and I know Doc have trialling a few things around the country, and you know, each area is different, but they employed my buddy Kahu Mahuika down on Franz Joseph there to tell some of those stories. And they're doing the same thing up at Tane Mahuta in there in Northland.
Nice,
So
yeah.
they've got tangata whenua telling, employed full time to tell the stories that they want to tell.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool, and I'd like to see that too. I'm in the process of writing the conservation management strategy for Hawke's Bay and the East Coast.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I'm trying to put in there as well, is like, wouldn't it be neat on everywhere we go where tangata whenua are paid to
Yeah.
share that knowledge if they want to share it.
Yeah.
It'll just give us a real depth of understanding of the land, but also like what our culture is as a contemporary Aotearoa moving forward.
Yeah.
Because without that transfer of knowledge, it's really difficult to understand and respect anything.
Yes.
It's like the trees, If we don't know what they're good for,
Yeah.
how do I really like care for you and respect you,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of that transfer of knowledge. I reckon it's real important.
And that's why I'm sort of so attracted to the ecology thing. It's kind of like telling the story of not just the area, but also your target species and what to look out for. And again, that like healthy bush, healthy ecology, and healthy deer. Well, then you've got some synergy going on.
Healthy land, healthy people,
Yeah, exactly. Then if you're the one eating it, then you should be healthy too.
I had the most rugged experience earlier this year, Flew into the Raukumara, and I'm from Gizzy, so the Raukumara is like our local patch of scrub. Flew into the Raukumara, spent 3 hours looking for supplejack tips. And like, we eat supplejack tips, they're like tasty bit of greenery, so when we don't have food in the bush, that's kind of like one of our primary food sources. Spent 3 hours looking, supplejack everywhere, no tips.
Right.
All been eaten by deer and possums.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the situation there? Too many deer.
Yeah.
Hinds, like the deer are skinny, you shoot a deer, their back stakes are like sunk in.
Yeah.
Too many deer, the hinds are going barren. It's like all in that backcountry stuff there. It's like, okay, what is that balance? Because if the bush isn't good, we don't get good deer. You know, from there, if there's too many deer, it's silting up our rivers. Suddenly, there's nowhere for the fjords. You know, the fjord feed on invertebrates under those river cobbles. If it's silted up, the fjord can't feed because there's nowhere for the invertebrates to live. Like, it just has so many flow-on effects as well. And so, to me, I'm just like, yeah, got to come back to, let's get as many people in the backcountry understanding the situation, harvesting from there, right? Because it's like with the plants, if we don't harvest, we don't care as much.
Yeah.
You know, if it's feeding our tummies, suddenly we really care about it. So the more connected we are to our ecosystems, I reckon, the better it is for the land, and the more the land can support us.
Yeah. On the Whio, is that what the soft mouth is, the soft tip is about, getting around those boulders?
The rubbery black tip,
Yeah.
just feels out those insects, and feels out, imagine having a hard tip jutting up against the boulder, wouldn't it be that flash?
Because that was, we were sort of looking at it in terms of trout, that dirty word. We were sort of flipping a few boulders, and there'd been a single Whio right up in the Makino, going up towards Mangatarutu. And then down at Te Puia there was a group of 4, and then further down the Mohaka there was, I think it was like 7 or 8 or 9. It was I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. Like, my binos are crap, so I was like looking through them like, are you sure that Whio? And then I grabbed my mate's ones, Dave's ones, and I looked through. I was like, that actually is like them. It was unbelievable to see like a big mob of Whio like running around the shallows and chasing each other.
Comical little dudes. Yeah. But that's just testament to ground control, eh?
Yeah.
Like that Ruahine Whio group, they've been trapping on the ground there for a few years now.
Yeah.
And they're just getting birds like overflowing to all those rivers. It's bloody amazing, eh?
Yeah, that we cleared 4 stoats, and I passed the details on to Fee Dooley, and she sort of said, if you get a fresh one, like get it all over the trap, so that should attract more. You touched on with Matt about the 2-kill trap. Like, why? Like, obviously the stoats become trap shy, but why does a two trap work? Is it because something to do with the juvenile comes with mum or something like that? So
stoats don't become trap shy if they're dead.
Yeah, right.
I just want to make that real clear to whoever's listening to that. Like, there's this whole school of thought around trap shy stoats.
Yeah.
That was a thing with fin traps. Because
the grabs them.
Real traditional trap, they're a kill trap, but we'd often catch them by their paw.
Right.
And we'd often have pull-outs and things like that. So stoats do become educated and trap shy through that process.
Because there's an alive stoat.
It's an alive stoat that's had a negative experience with a trap, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't go back in there.
No.
So that's how we get trap shy stoats. But for those Doc 200s kill traps, they're dead before they can get shy.
Right.
But the benefit of having 2 is around, if you had 1, you'll catch the mother.
Yeah.
The mother teaches the juveniles how to hunt. So they're all following behind her going, what's she getting into? Oh yeah, I'll have a go at that. If you have a double set, you're going to catch a mother and a juvenile.
Yeah.
Resetting traps.
Yeah.
You'll catch a mother, she'll go up, whack, fall down. They're like, yup, what's that all about? Have a nosy, whack, the next one, whack. It's common for me to see multiple stoats under a resetting trap too.
Yeah.
So it's about predating upon the stoat and exploiting its behaviour of that mother teaching the juveniles how to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what double sets are good for, but that's why resetting traps are even better.
Yeah. So there's plenty of people out there that reckon that they don't work. I've seen plenty of videos of it. I've seen plenty of pictures of, like say 4 stoats on the ground, or the Sikh Foundation had that one of like 6 rats on the ground.
Yeah.
Is it that they're not checking them enough, or?
No, it's one of these things. So to create a resetting trap, the team at Good Natured they had to create a trap that cleared itself.
Right. Yeah.
Us as trappers, we love to see dead things, right? Like it makes us, it satisfies that urge, because we're like, humans are hunters, right?
Yeah.
We're just like that, so wired in our brains to be hunters. When we shoot something, it's like shooting a deer and then it disappearing. You're like, I know that killed it.
Yeah.
Can't find it anywhere. Like, it's not satisfying.
Yes.
Trapping, it's the same thing. Like, someone finds
that same devastation.
someone finds a dead thing in a trap, they're like, yes, I'm stoked. If someone is like, finds a resetting trap and the animals underneath it have been scavenged, it's not satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter that the field numbers in the stream have increased from 7 to 27 in 5 years. All that matters is that you're not seeing the dead thing. So for you just got to change that mindset, and we know that resetting traps do increase field numbers from 7 to 27 in 5 years. We know that the Seeker Foundation, they went from 2 pairs to like 14 birds in the first year.
Yeah.
Like, like that evidence is there for success. The resetting traps have been proven all over the country for all kinds of species, for rats and stoves. It's just we can't get over that mental blockage for ourselves.
Yeah.
But the other thing I tend to look at it is I try to explain to people that we put a bait station under our house, with tox in it. Don't see the dead rats.
No.
It's work. We haven't got rats anymore. Okay. What's the difference between putting a non-toxic station under your house and not seeing the dead rats and still not having rats? To me, I think about our resetting traps like that. It's like a non-toxic bait station.
That's cool. Yeah. So obviously, like you said, the recovery of the FIO is quite sharp and increased. Are we sort of going to find that we get to a limiting carrying capacity of FIO, and then it's like, well, what's the broader ecology doing?
I hope so,
Yeah.
I hope so. Definitely in the Ruhe here, there's been reports that they're flying to the Tararuas by themselves, not finding any mates and flying back.
Yeah.
Definitely know, like in Te Urewera, we're getting spillover into the Waiaweka, which is just east.
Okay.
Which is really exciting. And then I'm establishing a conservation project there in the Waiaweka to hopefully get spillover into the Raukumara as well.
Right.
So I think that's how we'll naturally progress. We will reach carrying capacity. They'll kick their juveniles out because they're territorial little buggers. They're real aggressive. And once they kick the juveniles out, they'll be seeking new territories. And we're finding that up in Gizzy, there's a couple of massive field projects up in Gizzy, and we're finding field turning up in farmers' creeks and things like that where they haven't been historically.
Has any banded?
Or
track?
No, there's not to my knowledge, no.
Yeah.
It's just
a
win.
How do you catch them, I guess?
You used to catch them down a field, and put mist nets up across a river.
Righto, yeah.
And then you'd kind of block off the sides with sticks and stuff, and then you'd walk up the river with your dog, and the birds would fly off and hit the mist net, and you'd catch them, and then you'd weigh them and take blood samples and check their pans and things like that. So definitely, it's good fun to catch. Feel bloody good fun to catch, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Dogs and mist nets.
So we can sort of monitor and track and maybe see where they end up.
But if
we get to that stage,
if they're spitting out that many juveniles, I don't know if we need to, eh?
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty once they're established and once they're spitting out juveniles, they're pretty secure, eh?
So that for me then makes it pretty remarkable that they can disappear from an area. Are they what is it? Just the stoats? They're just so sensitive to the stoat.
Stoats, eh? So feels really sensitive at 2 times of the year.
Yeah.
So they're sitting on their nest. They're
Yes.
sensitive to the stoats predating that nest. And then their juveniles can't fly away.
Okay.
Because they don't have good feathers yet. So that period of time from about August, September, they're sensitive to the stoat predation. And then again in February, the adults molt, bird species molt, and they lose their feathers and grow new ones. And so Phil can't fly very well during that molt in February, March.
Yeah. And
so those 2 periods of the year, they just get smoked.
Mm-hmm.
Put a single line of traps up that river, because stoats, they travel linear landscape features, because easiest path, like us when we hunt, right?
Yeah.
If you're lazy like me, you would hunt the rivers and the ridges and spurs, right? Yeah. So do the stoats. So if we put a single line of traps up a river, just cream every stoat that interacts with that river.
Yeah.
Feels sweet.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it was pretty easy going that Makina Mahaka the loop, and there they were.
Birds everywhere.
Yeah, birds everywhere and dead stoats. It was awesome.
Simple equation, eh?
Yeah. So, I can't wait for Justin to get started.
Totally, eh? I can't wait too. That'll be an amazing project. And I reckon it's 2 years you can have birds back there.
Yeah, and it's awesome that it's gone not just fair, but the Kiwi work from Wellington's, joined up as well, which is cool. How much sort of Kiwi stuff are you seeing up around Turiwera?
The Kiwi work is well before my time.
Yeah.
That's headed by, I can't even remember who set that up, but I know Lindsay Wilson was a big part of that.
Cool.
So that was all done with fin traps and then Dock 200. So
yeah,
it's pretty massive. But yeah, that's done ages ago. Kiwi are real. They're not at risk out there. Yeah.
So they can hatch up there.
Yeah.
And survive up there.
Yep. Real easy.
That's awesome.
Yep. All in the wild. Which is pretty neat, I reckon. And there's a couple of peninsulas on Waikaremoana that have large trapping projects on them, and they're just hot spots for Kiwi. Like going there at night is just ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hopefully the Cape can start really getting on top of the piece. They've got the fence up, but it's a leaky fence.
Yeah,
and
I used to manage a predator control up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how was it looking when you were there?
You're right, like real leaky fence. And definitely, when I was there we did a bit of an overhaul on the methodologies, that's for sure. A few weasels still living within there, a few stoats still living within there, plenty of cats. But yeah, definitely much better than it would be on the outside here, which is good, Yeah. They got like 2 different species of Kiwi out there,
Oh wow.
They got the little spots and they got the browns.
Look.
That's cool. And then they got like Takahe and Tuatara, and they got Titi out there.
What's the Titi?
Like mutton birds.
Oh right. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So one day we might have a sustainable harvest up this way too.
Wow.
Should be neat.
Yeah. Again, do they know if they're coming back and forth from down south?
They know that they're returning to site.
Yeah.
Which is because they were all translocated here. So you feed up the chicks, hand stuff their sardines down their throats, and then get them up to a big enough weight, and thought being that they'll return to the place that they were a chick. Yeah. And so let them all go, and about 3 years later had birds starting to come back and make nests, which is cool. Yeah.
Now I was one of the fellas I went to primary school with, he brought the odd one to school, It was delicious.
You love it? That's awesome.
Like, yeah, as I was saying with Justin, I love like lamb and marrow and stuff. And so like, it's just like a bird version of that, like greasy, oily, fatty, dark meat. It's so yum.
It's just like the ultimate happy place,
Yeah.
Like it's got like. Do you reckon it talks to some kind of strange Viking part of us?
Probably, like, yeah. You're wiping your mouth off.
Yeah, it is. Just like juice running through your beard. It's like, it's pretty good.
Yeah, vegan's worst nightmare.
It's just second generation was it second generation grass or something? Meat, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just, what is it? We can't eat grass, but the cow can to feed us. Something like that.
Oh,
no. So, how much have you got left with this conservation plan? How long is that going to take?
Not sure. It's been a bit of a process,
Yeah.
And we're going to open it up for submissions later on this year, hopefully.
Cool.
But that's massive too. Like I look at this big tar debate that we're having at the moment, and as hunters, we are terrible at submitting on the government level.
Yeah.
So we're really bad at when DOC is trying to communicate with us, with the processes that DOC has, we're terrible at engaging with those processes, and then we complain afterwards.
Well, that's even like, I got the email from Fish and Game the other day, being like, we're having a review, make a submission, and unfortunately for me, like, I'm trying to get educated as I can around game animals, and I've only just started looking at birds, and I was like, and I know bugger all about fishing. And I was like, I'd love to submit something, but I don't even know where to begin.
Totally.
Yeah.
So confusing,
Yeah.
And I was just saying, mate, like I got put on this conservation board like 3 years ago, and this legislation stuff just went over my head. there's a thing called a CMS. I didn't know what that stood for. It turns out it's a conservation management strategy.
Right.
And apparently we were responsible for writing it.
Yeah.
And it took me like 2.5 years until I understood what it was, and turned out that being on the conservation board, you're responsible to write essentially DOC's milestones for the next 10 years in this region.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure I'm the only hunter in the whole country on a conservation board.
Yeah.
That's freaky.
Yeah.
So when it comes to game animals being valued in the regions, how are you going to get your voice if you're not putting into that?
Yeah.
And when it comes down to getting infrastructure that helps us, like dog boxes at huts, like meat safes at huts, like consent and access to places that we hold of value, because DOC's in many places trying to drop back the amount of huts they're managing.
Yeah.
And as hunters, we're like one of the bigger user groups of the backcountry, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And so I reckon that the more people that we have as hunters engaging on DOC's processes,
Yeah.
the better it is going to be for us. Otherwise, we end up in this situation where DOC has tried to communicate it, or not tried to communicate it, but still follow the process, but we just haven't engaged in the process.
Yeah. Well, no, with the Rohini group, there's a number of different hunting elements to the Rohini group, and us at Hastings Deerstalkers have got a representative down there. Yeah, he works for the regional council and things like that, and he's engaged in there, and he was telling me about some of the access over on the Taihape side, trampers and walking groups, and then also the hunting groups trying to get this access in. But the challenge for him was, he was sort of saying that they had this hour-long discussion about the access, and then it kind of fell back to them to, I don't know, write something or lobby something, and it was like, and maybe we have, all those groups, maybe we have sat on our hands too long, and that's why we're all, when it's our turn to take a step, we're all so hesitant.
Totally. And it's real clear, DOC was formed from the Forest Service and the Wildlife Service amalgamating.
Yeah.
They were both services, eh?
Yeah.
New Zealand, in my opinion, is still in that mindset that DOC's a service.
Okay.
Totally not.
Yeah.
Totally not. They're not there to serve us, eh? They're a department responsible for conservation.
Okay.
So for us, we kind of need to do it for ourselves.
So from the hunting perspective, how would you frame that?
So from a hunting perspective, we've got examples such as, the Deerstalk Association here in the Ruhine.
Yeah.
They've been responsible for maintaining huts.
Yeah.
Right. So they've maintained the huts that they use.
Yeah.
Enhance their relationship with the department. Department respects them. They can pretty much do a lot of things now because that relationship's so good. Ourselves up in the Waiaweka, we've just put in 200 and something traps around this field. We're doing the conservation work for ourselves, but that also allows us to maintain tracks. It allows us to look after huts. It allows us to do a whole lot more in DOC estate because we've front-footed it. We've kind of said, we're interested in giving back too. And the Seeker Foundation doing the same thing. Wapiti boys, it's all about that, really. It's about, if we care about it, let's front foot it, let's do the work. And then suddenly DOC will be seeing us doing the work, and they'll go, we're interested in having a relationship with you, come into our office and we'll have a conversation. We just sidestepped the submission process. Suddenly we're talking to the big wigs. Suddenly we're not having to go through writing huge documents to try and get heard. We're just having a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And that's where us as the public, I reckon, need to be. We need to front foot and be like, well, we actually care about this issue. Let's fix it.
Yeah.
And DOC's so open to it. Yeah. They're so open to it because they don't have the budget to do it.
Yeah. Well, I know for us at Hastings, we, like I said, keep talking about that Mahaka Makino, and hopefully we can expand and connect up with the Oamaru River stuff, and and then slightly further along from that is Justin with Tararuas, and
Totally right.
slightly further along from that is Sika Foundation, slightly further along from that is Field and Wapiti Foundation. So like right now we have a clear pathway of what's possible. Am I right? Or
Totally. And like, feel it's our species.
yeah.
Let's do that. Connect those up, and then what are we going to focus on? Sounds like Justin's got us focusing on Kiwi after that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Eh? You imagine that Wellington to East Cape,
It's totally doable though, eh?
and then flick around Mamaku, Kaimai, Coromandel. Like they're already in Coromandel.
Totally.
Connect those ones up, like that'd work it.
And Kiwi, that like they bloody flourish in dairy farms, eh? They're just in there digging through the cow poo looking for worms, eh? So they love the old modified habitat. There's no reason why we can't have Kiwi through that Waikato country.
Imagine that, eh? Like walking around moving the cows and seeing Kiwi running through the paddocks.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. Now that's a dream.
Dream state, eh? Dream state. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, the Waikato is awesome as well. Like there's all those little hilly ranges as well. Like I've gone into Tapui a couple of times between Cambridge and Matamata, and like it's an awesome little pocket of bush. Like there's fallow in there, and yeah.
That's right. Like there's so many little blocks that people don't give pressure, eh?
Yeah, and like that one's such an easy one. Again, you get to connect with Doc, so you email the doc officer in Hamilton, and she just says, and she gives you it was a lady when I was there, she gives you a run sheet of what you saw, and if you shot something and all that, and the first time I went there, I heard this screeching, and I messaged her, and I was like, what was that sound? She said, that would have been kaka, and I was like, oh, wicked. It was dark, so I couldn't see it, but just hearing this bird losing it. So no, you're right. It's like on a personal level, we've all got like a love for conservation, a love for the bush, and put your idealisms aside and let's get on with it, eh?
I think so, eh? There's simple things we can all agree on, eh?
Yeah.
And it's like I think dockies and hunters will agree that it's not ideal to shoot tara and leave them. Not ideal, right? We also can all agree that tara having a significant impact on the alpine environment. We can also agree that here are too.
Yeah.
But there's all of these commonalities that we can agree on because they're fact. We just need to have those conversations, and I think the more we come to the table as an interested party and front foot that stuff, the more we're going to be heard, eh?
Yeah. So the thing that frustrates me is the lack of science around tara. As you're sort of saying, like you're in a science degree and you've found your way into conservation. How rare within the degree was the sort of hunting element, or like what's the sort of ideology of the degree that you found?
Like how
is kind of like the ideal in terms of ecology taught in New Zealand. Is it about pre-colonial New Zealand, or is it about working with the ecology that we've got right now and the powers, the sort of species at play that are there now?
Well, it's a no-brainer really. Like what is taught in our education system is that these animals are introduced and they are having a detrimental impact to our ecosystems.
Right.
And I don't think that's debatable.
No, you're right.
And that is the fact, really. So that's what's been taught. The ideology is not in science. The ideology is not really taught, is it? It's more more just about science. That's the fact. They're having a negative impact. But in the industry of conservation, or environmental science, there's definitely an undertone that if we can get rid of these introduced predators and introduce species such as the ungulate, such as deer and tahr, etc., the ecosystems are going to be way more intact and way more diverse, which I know, in a scientific manner of speaking, that's pretty much what the Earth's survival is based on, is biodiversity, right?
Yeah.
And and these animals reduce our biodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of places in the world where these animals, such as red deer, for example, fit into those ecosystems.
Yeah.
New Zealand's not one.
Mm-hmm.
So if we've got all of these species, and tahr's a real easy one because it's actually possible to eradicate them.
Yeah, and that's why I
Same with
thought that's why it was happening, because it was like, here's our example. This can be done.
We can't eradicate red deer right now.
Yeah.
As far as
don't tempt them.
but with biodiversity hat on, right? A lot of your listeners will hate me, but for me, I look at it and go, I can't wait for the day that we can get back to harvesting the species that we whakapapa to.
Yeah.
So I cannot wait to get back to the day where my descendants can go hunting for kiriru,
Yeah.
for takahi,
So
for kakapo, but
wicker.
for weka. They're delicious, by the way, eh?
Yeah, I was about to say, on a previous podcast, it was about regenerative agriculture. The name that John was bringing up was Peter Barrett, and I was getting mixed up with Roger Beatty.
Yeah. Awesome.
And the awkward or controversial thing about Roger Beatty is he's taking this sort of African conservation model of if it's valued, then it survives type thing. And he's like, well, why can't we create a season around wicker?
Is that an African conservation model, or is that like a Māori conservation model?
Right.
To me, it's not dissimilar. So if we look at it, to have something of value,
Yes.
like to protect wicker, or to protect supplejack, or to protect titi, which is happening down on Rakiura. To protect titi, we need to have a relationship with it.
Yeah.
If we harvest titi, we care about it more, we protect it more.
Right.
And so, for me, that's how I feel about it. It's like, one of the big drivers for me to do conservation work is one day, I'm happy for it not to be my lifetime, but one day it'll be cool for my descendants to be able to have such abundance of kiriru that they can eat them, eh?
Yeah.
And to me, I'm not fussed if there's no deer, there's no pigs, there's no tahr, there's no chamois. For me, as a human, I'm like, I'm just going to turn, and my family's just going to turn our hunting prowess and our hunting skills and our providing skills to harvesting these other cool species,
Yeah.
Like, I just don't see what the difference is. I feel like we get so toey about this particular species because it's so right now.
Mm-hmm.
If we step back and we think big picture, if we can get more biodiversity, and I know that tahr don't eat bloody kiriru, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just...
They're not a predator, but
that's just a logical...
They impact the ecosystem, yeah.
They impact a ecosystem for sure. We got to get rid of the stoats and everything else for these things to pop off. But for me, I'm not fussed about that, eh?
Yeah.
Like, big picture, I'm like, cool. We're always going to be hunters as people. We're always going to have an abundance of species. It's just whether we choose for that to be ungulates or our traditional species.
Yeah, and that was a real sort of penny drop moment with Cam, like him saying how Māori have decided to, protect the birds and or not necessarily them deciding, like conservation has decided that they're protected species, and so they've kind of transposed that diet to pork and venison. And like, man, I had a wee young Māori fella in 2 days ago, and he's just absolutely frothing on duck shooting and deer and pigs, and I sort of felt a little bit sorry for him. They lived in the 21st century, because I was like, mate, you would have been the man in the tribe.
But you would have been too, right? Like, us as hunters, we all would have been. I reckon. Like, we all would have been. It's not the species we're hunting.
Yeah.
is that we're hunters, eh?
But he's isn't he coming to see us because he's having trouble reading, and it's like, mate, if you were 200 years ago, you would have been the King Dick.
Reading, don't worry about reading. I've got all this food.
Yeah, that's right. I was like, he was such a cool kid, and I can't wait for him to meet Mark and do his little behaviour with him, because man, if he can read and write books as well, this kid could be a champ.
Dangerous, eh?
Dangerous. He, like yourself, he could go to university and learn all about it, and he might be the one that gets Killaroo back on the menu.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully.
That's a weird thing to say, like, given our current, rules around and out of birds. It's an interesting thing to say. Like,
it gets met with a lot of negativity from a lot of folk. Interesting thing was in lockdown, eh? We went down because we were visiting our local reserves and parks because they're just within walking distance. Found a couple of examples of very distinctly long pieces of wood with corn on them, and found some very distinct piles of kidderoo feathers where they've been plucked. And so it gets met with negativity, and I wonder too if we ever got to a dire situation, those rules would just be put to the side anyway. So for me, I'm like, well, let's just do the work to make that all right,
Yeah.
Because it was pretty confronting actually. Yeah, like I was pretty angry at the time that people would go down to our local reserve and just harvest a feed of kidderoo.
Yeah.
It was pretty gnarly.
Yeah. Wow. My mate had a terrible job of a beast nicked from his place, and
True.
Yeah, just like one back leg, half of back steaks, and that was it. I was just like,
what a waste, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that was what really made me realise that we're in a little bit of a squeeze in this country,
Yeah.
And hey, we've got out all right, but yeah.
And we're lucky, eh?
Yeah.
Because we've got the skills to provide for ourselves.
And that was what was quite, again, fascinating. Like, what's important to us is having hunting essentially banned. What was, yeah.
That's scary, eh?
Yeah, like, man, that really is. I've said it a few times. Nothing against Jacinda Ardern or whatever, but like a lot of things this last election cycle have made it tough for me to relate to those sort of Labour policies, and it's just like, I'm all for looking after people, but this is coming at a bit of a cost.
I really support the level 4 lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was confronting for me to be told that in a dire time where we're not doing well financially, because for work we were cut to 80%.
Yeah.
I'm the only income earner in our whānau.
Right, yeah.
And so for me it was real confronting being told, nah, you can't, not only can you not go to a distance to harvest food, you can't go into the ocean to harvest food, you can't go and hunt. I'm like, who am I
who
to
am I?
be?
Yeah.
You're telling me that I can't work, so therefore I can't earn money to provide, and you're taking away my options to provide. Like, it felt pretty confronting, eh?
Yeah. Another like weird sort of way of looking at the world I've had lately is walking with my daughter where she lives around the market gardens, and she's kind of like, oh, we'll pick some lettuce, and I said, oh, sorry, and that actually belongs to the farmer.
Yeah.
And then I said out loud to her, I was like, do you want to hear something ironic, Billy? Like, she's 2.5, she doesn't care what I say. But I was like, the farmer grows all of this lettuce to sell to supermarkets to then buy food.
It's weird, eh?
I was like, man, that's a weird thing.
That's so strange, eh?
And that's even like, us at my mate's farm, that was what I've said, it was quite lucky. I had space, and if it really came to it, we had food. But for the most part, all of those cattle and sheep and goats go off the property. As I said, they shoot a lot of deer, so we eat a lot of venison.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to beef, it's kind of like through someone else, and like even I was talking with Sam the other day. She's like, I think we've had like 1 or 2 lambs this whole time we've been here. And I was like, yeah, it's like, isn't that bizarre?
It's real strange, eh?
Yeah.
It's it just goes to show that disconnection from our food, eh?
And then even me growing up with sheep on 2 acres, it was kind of like I think we might have only taken 1 or 2 to the abattoir. Everything else, and you know why? Because it's like your parents are trying to pay a mortgage, but it's like we had food there.
We just gave it to someone else. For some money that's kind of can't eat that. Yeah, it's interesting. I've been trying hard out through lockdown to get my boy into mushrooming. He's like 15 months old.
Nice.
So good. He can now he knows the difference between like edible mushrooms and non-edible mushrooms.
Yeah.
And go out there harvesting, and he like picks them and gives them to me now, and putting them on the drying rack, and he's like doing that, and then taking them off the drying rack, stuffing them into jars. He's like 15 months, and I'm like, as far as like connection to food, like I reckon that's a tick box. Eh? We're doing alright in that respect, eh? But like, hey, with your daughter too, like that must be really hard to make sense of, eh? There's food, we're hungry.
Yeah, I want to eat some lettuce. There's heaps of it. No, her grandparents have a veggie garden, so she's often pulling stuff out, and she'll feed the lettuce to the cows as well. Awesome. It's good stuff. But yeah, it's funny you're saying about the edible, non-edible. There's I think it's called like yellow something. Oh, I'm terrible at the name. Saying the names, but it looks like the field mushroom, but it has like sometimes it will have little yellow rust spots on it, and then where it's on the ground, it has a really distinct ring around it, and it's not going to be poisonous for you, but it's going to give you a crook guts. And yeah, I sort of found one day up in Pukekohe as well, and I sort of looked at it, I was like, oh, that's not the same. It has like pale gills as well.
Oh, true.
And so I looked up on New Zealand Mycology or whatever the page is, and it kind of said, well, it's unlikely to be fatally poisonous, but probably not. So it's like edible but not.
Yeah.
And then when I was over in Australia, I was driving along the road, and where I lived is kind of like cattle capital of Australia, and so there's like avocados, macadamia, and cattle everywhere.
Sounds like a dream.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was beautiful, eh? But driving along the road for these big white mushrooms, I was like, oh, here we go. And I pulled over to the side of the road. It'd been raining, and they were gigantic with these bright green spots on them. We're like, that's the one that kills you.
They look toxic.
I think New Zealand is mostly lucky with its mushrooms, but there's definitely some bad ones around.
I hear there's some gnarly ones, eh?
Yeah.
Like I haven't eaten any rough ones yet.
Have you found the blue one?
Yeah, found a couple, but not not great examples. Like I'm still waiting for like that cream de la creme where like it's like, oh, I'm gonna take a photo of that guy.
Yeah, I took a photo of it in the Blue River, and I don't know where the photo is anymore, and I need to go back and look through the blog I wrote about the Blue River, because I'm pretty sure I put it in there.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was in this like really nice moss bed and this beautiful, I think it was more of a purple.
Where's Blue River?
At the top of the Makaurora. Goes sort of there's blue pools, which are they're beautiful, cold. So you get past Lake Wanaka, past Makaurora Township, and then you're on your way to Haast Pass, and you're just on your left, and I think it goes in about 18 k's. Again, the top of that, or most of that's nearly U-shaped valley. Me and my mate were too scared. We walked to the valley, got blown up by some berries, and Justin tells me, "Don't worry about it, just carry on."
Yeah.
And he said, "Just I'll give away Justin's tip." He said, "Act like you're a deer," being like, "What's that about?" Like he said, he kind of like kicks some stones around about it, and like does a little scramble, and then carries on. I was like, "Man, that's smart." And he's like, "Yeah, you'll probably get another deer being like, 'What's that idiot about?' and come out into the clearing."
Yeah. Those Haast deer are dumb too, eh? They're so dumb.
Yeah, I'd imagine there'd be some chamois up the top of those.
I've not
those
seen
bases,
it yet,
but
yeah.
that Makarora helicopter pilot, I think, does a pretty good job around that area.
There's a bit of a clean up.
Yeah, it does a bit of a clean up. Oh, so yeah, you know, or that just might be all the ballot excuses.
Yeah. No, then he went down there a few years back now. Mate hadn't done a roar before.
Yeah.
He wanted to hunt the bottom, like, you know, the river flats for the roar. I was like, might pick up a stag down there, but you know where I'm going. I'm going up to the top, eh? And got him up there.
You remember mate needed you.
He wasn't.
Or someone like you.
The old mate hadn't really done much hill country before.
Yeah, we hadn't. Either.
So it was just like, hey, you look at that country, it's just so steep. You're like, there's no way we'll get up there.
Yeah.
And it was pretty sketchy. But we got about like halfway up and found a little wallow in that.
Yeah.
Let out a couple of moans and just all hell broke loose. Eh?
Oh, wonderful.
Bloody massive 13-pointer stepped out.
On his first roar.
First roar. Third deer, mate. Third deer. Oompa. Just like, that's just huge animal on the deck, eh? Just running for life.
I was about to say, you're his best mate, but yeah, man, his standards are high now.
Oh. But man, but those animals are just not spooky, I don't reckon, eh?
Yeah. Well, I never go back. So bad.
Next April, right?
Yeah, oh man, enough people would want to keep. Anyway, even yesterday, my mate in Christchurch like, when are you coming down to Huntara? I was like, oh, I'm coming down in January, but it's not to Huntara, it's to run a stupid race. Yeah.
Because what are you doing, 100k or something?
Yeah, 101. It's done. Through
Big summer.
Through Banks Peninsula in summer. Yeah.
That's intense.
It's going to be intense, but oh well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Awesome. There's no cover out there, eh?
Yeah, I know.
Beautiful.
Well, I saw David planted some trees the other day.
Cool. Very cool.
I don't think they will have grown by the time I get there.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay, mate. So, Sam the Trap Man, you're also on Facebook a bit?
Yeah, a little dabble on Facebook, eh?
Yeah.
Hamiora Gibson on Facebook.
Yeah.
Sam the Trap Man on Insta.
Yeah. And anywhere else? YouTube?
Oh, I have a little YouTube channel, but I haven't really pushed it at all.
Yeah.
Mostly poke things out through the Game Gear
Cool.
YouTube channel.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Wicked. So the thing I get people to leave us with is something that always shows up in their life. Like, it can be a quote that kind of resonates with you, or just a way that you sort of try and navigate the world.
For me, like, you know, have you seen that movie Fury?
No.
It's an old war movie, and they're a big tank scene, and there's 3 tanks against like 20, eh?
Wow. Yeah.
And they're just going to get clobbered, and the captain of the tank goes, "Oh, well, it's the best job I've ever had." And the boys are all like, "Yeah, we did. Yeah, best job we ever had, best job we ever had." And I try and meet the world with, like, I reckon there's 2 things, eh? Like, if you got if I'm doing a real horrible job and like I don't want to be there, I can like trick my brain into be like, "Yep, this is the best job I ever had. Always dreamed of doing this as a career. I'm living the dream," you know, and just try and meet the world with that kind of anyone asks how I am, like, "Yeah, living the dream," you know.
Nice.
I can almost just like trick myself into being positive all the time.
Yeah.
And that, I reckon, serves me pretty well.
Yeah. And I suppose that becomes really easy when you are on a roll as well. It's like, this is the best job I've ever had.
Like, it's so good, eh? People believe the hype, eh? And then they give you an opportunity that's awesome, and they're like, "Oh, that guy must be good. He must be loving it." And it's like, "Yeah, no, I am." And you just gave me an incredible opportunity to go on an epic conservation trip or epic hunting trip. Right, you cracked it again.
Wicked.
Self-fulfilling, eh?
It's me. I love it.
What about you? I noticed people haven't asked you that.
Yeah,
What's
well,
your tagline?
The podcast will come out with the life advice I came up with while I was out running, and it's surround yourself with savages.
Yeah.
So like, even when you're sort of shortcutting yourself, you kind of like, I'm a big accountability type person.
Yeah.
And so like, if you're surrounded with people that sort of like-minded and are pushing the boundaries, well then you yourself have got no excuses.
Yeah.
And then also by you doing your thing, it means that they've got no excuse either.
Totally.
And so it then fits in with that rising tide lifts all ships type stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at the moment. Yeah.
So surround yourself with folks that are just grinding.
Yeah, getting after it, doing big things. Wicked. We'll hit stop.
This
This is
is
wicked.
Thanks for having me on.